Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Simple Stories, and I have a layout featuring the A Charmed Life collection, and I've combined a bunch of the Silhouette Simple Stories cut files to create the bold title along the right side of my page. So I'm going to first show you how I combined all of these cut files and also changed them up a little bit in the Silhouette software. I'm going to go ahead and choose the first file. I just typed in Simple Stories in the search box so that it would bring up all of my Simple Stories cut files in the Silhouette software. And I chose the Hello Sunshine first. I'm going to rotate it since it imports in kind of tipped on its side. And then I clicked the Release the Compound Path, and then I ungrouped the design to get rid of that outside border. It's sized to be a 4x6 card, so I don't need the outside border, I just need the text. Once I have that ungrouped, I am simply going to change the size of this design. I grouped the Hello Sunshine then again because it does ungroup the entire thing, each individual letter. I just dragged a text box around, I dragged a box around the entire design and grouped it. I resized it to the size that I needed it to be for my page, and I'm going to go ahead and import or open my next design, which is the 4x6 card that says I Love Summer. Again, I clicked the Release Compound Path, clicked Ungroup, then I'm going to click and drag a box around the I Heart Summer and click the Group button again so it groups the entire thing, and then I'm going to change the dimensions to 3.72 inches wide. I want all of the designs to be the same width so that it looks kind of like a subway art with the text one right on top of another. So I'm going to go back to my library and pick my next design, which is in this thought bubble. I'm going to again release the compound path and ungroup this design, and I must need to do it the opposite way for this one. Ungroup, there you can see that they've all ungrouped. I'm going to get rid of the thought bubble, click and drag, group this design, and go over and change the dimensions. You do want to make sure you click the lock aspect ratio so that it changes everything in the right way. It doesn't distort the text at all. Going to go for my next design, and now this one's going to require just a little bit more work. I wanted this line to read bits and pieces, however there's not the ampersand in this particular design. So first I need to ungroup everything and just get the words that I want from this design. So I'm going to get rid of all of the rest of that, plus take out any of the inside pieces for the letters because I don't want those to cut. I'm going to go back, and I realized I had not taken out the inside pieces for the last design I did, so I'm just going to get rid of those now, and they can be a little bit tricky. I kept getting the outside of the O instead of the inside until I moved my cursor a little bit more towards the center. Get rid of the rest of those. I probably could have enlarged this to make it a little bit easier. So I got all of those inside parts taken out now, and I can regroup that so that I don't move anything accidentally. So next I need to click and drag around each word individually because I need to resize them because I want all of the letters to be exactly the same height. So I'm just going to start at 3/4 of an inch tall for both words. And again, I have grouped them individually. I'm going to line them up. I find it's easiest to line them up with one of those lines on my cutting mat. Now there is a design here from Simple Stories that does have an ampersand, which I need to use. So I'm going to ungroup and get rid of anything that I don't need. And then I want to release the compound path for this one as well. and get rid of the inside cut pieces because I don't need them for this design. And again, I want to resize this to 3/4 of an inch tall as well so that I can make a whole new phrase that says bits and pieces. So here I'm going to line them up with one of those lines that it shows the grid on my cutting mat or on the screen. Once I have those lined up the way I want them, I'm going to click and drag around the whole thing and group the entire design so I have a whole new phrase here. Very different than what it originally looked like, but it works perfectly for this. Again, I'm going to change the width of the design, and it looks like I did not get the ampersand when I made my box around all of that to group it together, so I'm going to try again, and there I got it this time, so I'll group it again and try again. You can always click the back button in that top right toolbar, or top left, excuse me, toolbar at the top of your Silhouette software to just go back to the way it was so you don't have to like resize anything again. And I'm going to go ahead with my next line, which I want to do this real life. And you can see that the two words in real life are different heights, so I will have to do much the same thing that I did with the last design. I'm getting rid of everything that I don't need. Going to click and drag around each word individually and group them together. I can change the height of them over here in my scale, and it just is easy for me to do it at 3/4 of an inch tall. It's about what they end up being, I think, maybe not quite. Now this design, I thought it would be fun because there's already a heart in my little Subway Art title border here. I thought it'd be fun to add maybe a few more images, or at least another image to kind of balance it out. So I'm going to go ahead and use the star from this Simple Stories design. Going to change the height of the star. I've ungrouped the design, got rid of everything I didn't need. I'll move the star down, and I will do exactly like I've done for the other designs. Click and drag a box around the entire design, group it back together, then change the width so that it's exactly like the rest of the text. And I'll move it into place. I've got just a couple more designs that I need to get for this particular design or title for my page. I'm going to grab the next design for Lookin' Good, ungroup it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of the Polaroids I don't need first. Then I'm going to release the compound path for the last one, ungroup it, and get rid of both of the outlines or outer borders for the frame. I hope that this is showing just how much you can customize your Silhouette designs to work exactly for you. It's probably my favorite part of die cut or digital die cutting, is just being able to manipulate the files to create your own custom type designs to make the cut files work for whatever page or project that you're creating. This is my last one here, and I'm going to do a couple different things to it because it has each word one on top of another, but I'm not going to have room for the words just like they are here. So I'm going to make 2 lines instead of 3. So just pretty much the same thing that I did before. I'm going to resize the words live and laugh, grouping each of them first. And then I will put those 2 together in a line. Go ahead and draw my line around those. Whoops, move that a little bit. And again, I can just click the back and it'll go right back to where it was. I'm going to change those to 3.72 inches and move that into place. And then I want the word play to be big and bold. So click and group around it and change it to the same width and move it into place, and you can see there is my title work all put together. And I am going to go ahead and cut that out of one of my 12 by 12 sheets of paper. I did group it together, you can see here. I'll cut that from a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, and then I will cut each of the words or pieces from 6 by 6 pieces of pattern paper individually. You can fit 4 of those 6 by 6 pieces of paper onto your cutting mat at a time, so it actually doesn't take quite as much time as you think it might. Now, I like to curl up my cutting mat when I'm removing it, as you can see here. That way it doesn't curl up your paper. If you pull your paper from your cutting mat, a lot of times it'll kind of curl. So I like to flip it and pull the cutting mat away, so the cutting mat is the one that's pulling back, because it's not near as likely to curl up as your paper is. And I love how well you can see just how well the silhouette cuts out these intricate letters. Now, I did cut one side of my paper a little bit smaller so that I could trim and place a little border sticker underneath this edge. And then I have a really thin strip of some of the yellow paper from A Charmed Life, one of their basics papers, that I'm just going to trim each end at an angle and place there along the right side of my page. Now, the title would look great. You could leave it just like this. However, for my page, I really felt like it needed a lot of color, especially since I cut that border out of a fairly neutral background. It just has that sprinkling of stars along one edge. So I printed my photos, and then I curled up the edges a little bit because they look like photo strips, and I always like curling the edges to give a little bit of distressing. And then I attached them with some of those faux washi tape stickers that from one of the snap sets. And I've printed my journaling by running it on one of the journal office cards from the DIY collection. I just temporarily attached it to my printer paper and then ran it right through my printer, and attached it to my page with just a tiny bit of foam adhesive. Or maybe not a tiny bit. I used quite a bit actually, because I really don't like if the page gets next to another one in the album and kind of squishes down in the middle or whatever if you don't have enough adhesive. Now, I'm using some glue pens. My glue pen that I really like to use with the fine tip from Zig ran out, and I didn't have an extra, and so I'm using the chisel tip one, and then also a fine glue tip pen that I don't like quite as well to do this. I would really prefer to have the Zig fine tip glue pen. That's my favorite for things like this. Now, any of the letters that are kind of small, I'm going to be using a sticky tool. You'll see it's kind of clear, but at one end has a little sticky thing that picks up your paper and places it really easily. And I'm speeding through this because it does take maybe a little bit of time to glue all of these in place, but I really think it's worth it because the end result, the layout looks great. It adds a ton of color and interest to the page. Now, with any type of liquid glue like this, even though this doesn't really give out that much glue at a time, it can tend to warp your page just a little bit because of the liquid, and I just like to use acrylic blocks for stamping. They're heavy enough that I just place them right over whatever I've glued onto my page, and it holds it in place. Here's that quick stick tool that is perfect for any of these little pieces like this. Anyway, those acrylic blocks will hold them in place until the glue dries, and it also keeps any of that area that has the liquid glue from bowing out or distorting. This is a little bit finer tip glue pen, the one that I don't like as well, that I really wish I'd had the Zig glue pen for these smaller letters. But it ended up working fine, so just had to be a little more patient. So one end of that quick stick tool is sticky for picking up and placing them where you want them to go. The other end is great for if they move a little bit, you could kind of just slide them back into place, which is wonderful. So I'm just going to continue to add all of the letters to my layout. And I keep moving my acrylic blocks as I'm working to hold down anything that I've already put in place. And I'm picking up my letters with one hand and gluing with the other in most instances. You can see I use both ends of the tool for the letter R there and forget. The great thing about all the 6x6 pattern paper designs that coordinate with the 12x12 collections from Simple Stories is how great they are for die cutting and things like this. Most of the time you don't need a 12x12 sheet of paper. Now I did for the background, obviously, for cutting out all of those at one time, but I was able to cut each individual little piece from just 6x6 pieces of paper instead of cutting up an entire sheet of 12x12 paper, which really saves a ton of paper. I only cut the pieces that I needed from each color out of a 6x6 sheet. And like I said before, all you have to do is you can cut 4 different patterns at a time. More if the sheets, I guess, are smaller scraps and you want to do that. But I just like to put 4 6x6 sheets on my 12x12 cutting mat at a time. And then just manipulate or move the designs that I want to cut from each color or pattern of paper, and then I'll cut them all at once. Makes it much quicker and easier. I'm going to just speed through the rest of attaching all of these letters because it's just the same thing until I get the whole design on there. But you can see it's really coming to life with all this color. Now on the finished layout, I did add just a few additional embellishments that I'm not going to share adhering them in the video portion of this, and that was just a scattering of sequins and like little gemstones or enamel dots just throughout that star border that's printed on the background sheet and also throughout the die cutting. I think it just finishes off the entire page with a little bit of dimensional embellishment. I've also used some of the die cuts from the Snap Summer set. It's a brand new set. It has these fun, bright summer themed die cuts, and I used a beach ball and bucket and some flip-flops. Now I'm going to add a few stickers, and I'm using them from A Charmed Life and from I Heart Summer, and just placing them right on my photos. I think they add a fun little element, almost like little captions for the photos, and I did move them around a little bit from how I first placed them down. I like the addition of those right on those photos like that. And then I thought I'd put a heart sticker, and then I decided I didn't like it, so I popped it back off. Or in a star one too, so I put it down at the bottom. Also, I added that little shine on sticker at the end of my die cut title because I thought that would be fun, and I tried to make that canvas sticker work and it didn't work either. So don't be afraid to switch things up. It's a work in progress. Here are those die cuts from the Snap Summer set. And then I'll glue on a sprinkling of sequins and things, and my page is finished. For all of the supplies you saw me use here today, they are linked below the YouTube video in the box underneath the video in the comments, above the comments section, I should say. Thanks for watching, and for more information you can visit my blog at nicolemcgork.typepad.com or simplestories.com. Thanks for watching.